everybody, Leilani Joy here, and welcome to Leilani Joy's Paint Along number 22, part 2. So this will be a continuation of my part 1, where we're continuing my Fairy Queen painting. So let's jump back in. So I'm just going to throw this out there because I know you guys are going to ask me. But yes, this is inspired by Neverending Story, the childlike empress. I didn't mean for it to be, actually. It wasn't my initial intention, but like it just sort of like came out that way because I like that little like headpiece that she had. And in my sketch, I originally was gonna have like hair like flowing out of it or whatever. But once I like finished the design of like with the wings and everything, I just felt like hair would have been too competitive with the beautiful wings and the crown and the headdress. I just didn't really think that hair, like a big hairstyle, would really fit with the piece. And so the more I looked at it, the more I liked this very slicked back hair, or you can interpret it as maybe even bald without any hair. So I know that's kind of different from what I usually do, because I usually just love doing hair, but I was like, I just don't think she needs hair. I think she's just fabulous without very much hair. I'm gonna slightly imply it on the top of her head, but really not do too much to show hair, because I just think she don't need hair. Okay, my next question. Okay, where did I leave off here? Okay, Lizzie Poos, what's the best advice you've ever received? Can be both art related or just life related. Well, that's a good question. I've answered certain kind of like different versions of this in the past. And one, I always bring this one back up because I just really like it, and it might have been one of the most honest and best advice I received in art school anyway. And it was from an instructor of mine. And this was in, I think, my second or last year. I can't remember. And it was a digital illustration class. And he said, and he wrote this on the board actually, and he's like, becoming a professional artist is 10% talent and 90% tenacity. And like, I'm not really sure if that's advice. He said that 60% of the people in the class would never work in the art industry. And he's like, I'm not saying that to scare you. He's like, I'm just telling you, statistically speaking, most of you will not end up actually working in this field because of how much tenacity and hard work it takes, no matter whether you're talented or not. And to a lot of students, they made like this like grimacy face, and they're like, you know, and I was actually like, okay, like I like that challenge, because like I said earlier, I was always a very determined and hard worker. So the tenacity part didn't scare me. I was more afraid of the talent part, because I was not sure if I had that. I was not sure if I had that like magic skill. And I always kind of like chuckle under my breath when people go, you're so talented. And I'm like, you know, thank you. Of course, that's a compliment. But I feel like I've had to work a lot harder to get where I am than some people who are truly just naturally talented. This has come from a lot of hard work, practice, trying to educate myself, trying to outdo myself. So I really don't owe that much of it to talent. I don't think. I've seen things I've done as a child, and none of it I would say was extraordinary for my age or anything. I just really liked doing it, so I did it a lot. So hopefully that encourages some of you guys. Obviously, you know, some industries are going to be different. They're like, okay, you're never going to be a model. You're too short. You don't have the right look. There's nothing you can really do about that. But an art or a skill is something anyone can build and improve and find success at. So I like that. That's definitely good news for me. So I was actually very excited about that day. And it stood out in my mind. I still remember it was like, I think the first day of class, and he was kind of giving us, you know, the syllabus run through and everything. And I was like, that's awesome. Because no one had ever said that. I always thought, okay, only the best will survive. And I'm not the best, and I never will be. And that was always kind of like in the back of my mind. So hearing that that might not be true was great for me. Next question comes from Sarah Ann Davis Art. Have you ever wanted to live abroad or study under anyone internationally? I didn't like growing up just because I was like kind of a fearful, like anxious, like teen and young college person. So I never did that, and sometimes I regret it because I think it would have been a great experience. But now I would definitely like to. I don't know if I'll ever have the opportunity to live abroad, but I think it actually would be a really cool experience. My husband and I kind of joke about it a lot, especially since our current political dynamic, which is all I'll say about that. I loved Japan so much. I felt like I could see myself living there, learning the language. Definitely, I would like to pursue more of the Japanese language. I love their culture. I don't know. I really enjoyed my experience there. I haven't really been. I've only been to Japan and Thailand and Canada once. So those are my only international experiences. So I can't say. I definitely like to travel more. I would be sad being far away from my family. I'm very close to my family, and I, like certain things. I'm very lucky to live where I live, and I like it here. So not sure, how long I'd want to be away. As far as studying under someone internationally, I'm not really sure. I'd have to get back to you on that one. It would always be a great opportunity, but like, I don't know. The idea of like going back to school also kind of like freaks me out. Even though I'm sure there's tons more I could learn, especially from a master. That would be pretty awesome. Okay, Chibi Monster's back today with a question. Can you do another Princess Mononoke inspired painting as a paint along? That would be awesome. With the holiday season coming in, what better way to explore into the spirit and demon world? Thank you for the compliment. I'm glad that you liked my last piece. I'm not like real inclined to like repeat subjects though. I mean, I did one. I did my interpretation of Princess Mononoke, and even though there's lots of other interpretations or ways I could do with it, I'm not real like, oh, I want to do another one. I'm also, like I've said before, I don't really like to get too deep into doing fan tributes. So, I have one piece already. I don't really want to spend a lot of time doing another copyright infringed piece from that. So yeah, I'll just have to leave it at that. I probably won't, just because of those reasons I just said. Okay, next I have a question from Caged Nephilim. I've been your fan for a few years now, and I love your work. Thank you so much. Great to see you here. My question is, how do you blend the acrylic paint so well? I have a hard time blending acrylic. I've answered this one, I think, quite a few times, so I'm not going to go into too much depth. I have this probably on another video where I talk about it. The short answer is I try to get the right consistency with using water, so I don't paint super like impasto thick. I paint rather thin, actually, and I build up layers on top of each other. So a lot of times when something looks blended, it's not blended so much as it's actually thin layers on top of each other, if that makes sense. So a little bit more of the technique I use is I do, flat, and then I do layer, 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 and I do them thin, and I blend them in with very subtle brush strokes, usually trying to follow the form a little bit. For example, I'm going to do this. It's going to look scary for a minute. Actually, I'll do it on scrap paper. Okay. Giving you guys a free demo here. So if you have your face, here's your head. Da-da-da. And then you have a second head here. It's going to be another example. Sorry, this is super sloppy. So say I have a base color of my face, and I want to add some details and layers and blending. So instead of just like mashing in the color, this is not a great example, or just kind of like randomly just putting it on, I try to follow the form. So if it's going over the eyelid, I actually make the brush strokes follow the eyelid. It blends in much better. And then when I'm doing the cheek, like if this was makeup and I'm doing a little bit of rouge or blush here, I try to follow the cheekbone. Now this is very subtle in my artwork because I don't really show a lot of brush strokes. I kind of blend them in thinly. So I will actually thin out the edge of that stroke. Sometimes I'll even use my finger, or I'll just use the paint really thinly. So you can't really see this so much, but like this is my thought process as I'm doing it. Same with the forehead. The strokes kind of go with the forehead. So I'll stroke around. So if you think of it like a 3D object kind of a thing. So, I mean, this is looking really creepy, but I'm just kind of trying to show you how I think about it when I'm doing it. Because you don't want to just like paint like that, like you just paint straight across and not thinking about the form underneath, because that's not gonna look as nice when you're finished. So this is definitely true, especially if you're doing thicker paintings where you want some of the brush strokes to show. The shape of the brush strokes is going to inform the viewer that there's a volume there. So that was like a terrible demo, but I'm just trying to quickly show you like how I think about it when I'm putting color on top. I have some other ones about how I blend. Sometimes I use two different brushes. I have one color on one brush and one color on the other, and I switch back and forth to blend the edge because acrylics dry really fast, so I have to do it wet into wet very quickly. My next question comes from Diamond. What do you get? What do you do to get inspired, creative, something, especially when you have artist block? I already answered that one at the beginning of the video, so you can refer to that one. Gabby. She has two G's. That's why I'm calling her Gabby. Hey, Gabby. What do you recommend for an artist to get his or her name recognized? We talked about that a little bit earlier as well, when we were talking about, you know, social media and getting yourself out there. Again, it's not a real short, easy answer. And like I said, some of the things that I did to do that are not really valid anymore. It's a little bit different. So like I advised earlier, just keep putting it out there and try to create good quality work. Quality over quantity. And that's definitely advice for everyone that kind of answered this question. Because I do see some artists who are like, oh, I just have to be faster. I have to put more out to get attention. Don't think about it that way, okay? Because if your artwork is good quality, people do know what's good quality. Well, sometimes they don't. Okay, but that's a slightly different subject. But if you're really doing high quality work, you've got good design sense, you've got good composition, color theory, you're telling interesting stories, subject matter, people will be drawn to it. They will find it. So don't focus so much on how to be seen, but I do feel like a lot of people now are trying to put the cart before the horse a little bit, because they see how much attention people get on Instagram and likes and things like that. And so they're like, oh, look at me, I'm not getting as many likes. And really, I encourage you guys, when you're in that pre-stage, to enjoy it a little bit. Enjoy the learning process. Enjoy the exploration and experimentation to figure out what type of artist you want to be, you know, what type of industry you might want to work in. And don't worry so much about getting validation from the public, because that can come later, anytime. So I see people trying to sometimes use that to fuel their inspiration and give them confidence. But I really encourage you guys to find some confidence within just through putting the time and effort into learning, practicing, and improving your craft. So I hope that kind of helps. I didn't really say that before, but it was kind of, I say this all the time, and this is a slightly different subject matter, but I'm very, very glad that there was no social media when I was in high school. It was just kind of starting when I was in college. So I never really dealt with, I honestly, I feel for you young people. I sound old, but I feel for you young people who are having to deal with your rating, like how many likes you have, how many followers you have, how popular you are to the general public. That is a lot of pressure and stress, and it's like kind of icky in a way. If you guys watch Black Mirror, which I'm a huge fan of that show, I think it's got some really insightful stories about technology and stuff. They have one which hits so close to home that it's actually frightening, I think. The one where Bryce Dallas Howard is in it. She's people rate their interactions with each other. So you can like give someone at Starbucks 5 stars if they're really nice to you. And so everyone's really fake and artificial because they're so concerned about their scores and how they rate. And I'm just like, oh, that just like turns your stomach, like having to try to live up to that. So anyways, going back to art, it's hard enough to try and fight with your own self and fight with your own self-validation and approval and confidence. And then it's like you put something out there and you have some troll hating on it. And it's like, oh my God, like this is just too much. And that isn't something that I dealt with because when I was a young person just drawing for me, it was just for me. And I had a big folder of drawings and I had a pen pal who I'd send my artwork to and we'd send art back and forth. And I was not posting it anywhere to be seen in public. And so I was able to be a little protected longer, you know, and I don't know, maybe some of you guys can still do that. Take a step back from it a little bit and just be like, I'm still in the learning stage. I don't need to have public approval because the public is cruel. And once you kind of jump in that water, it can be a great way to, you know, learn and get customers. But at the same time, it's like, okay, but now I'm doing my art for likes. I'm doing it to, you know, you're not doing it for yourself anymore. So hopefully that's a little bit of insight from this old timer. My hair's gone gray. I'm so old. Wait, kind of has. Okay. Next I've got one from Panda Hi Me 63 Doodles. What? That is quite a name. Hello, Leilani. I've been a big fan of yours for several years. Yay! Yay for my OGs, okay? I'm also an artist and I find it hard sometimes to just let my ideas flow. There's always a small bit of me that criticizes everything I do when I'm just sketching. Do you have any tips on ways to just let your mind do its thing and create art without so much self-criticism? Oh, gosh, you guys are on point today with the questions because this just like kind of flows into like another point. Kind of what I just said, right? Is, I mean, do you feel that pressure? I'd like to ask you because, do you feel that pressure to like post the sketch online and like get likes and stuff on it? Because I do think that's an added pressure. My husband all the time tells me like, he's like, I don't know how you paint on camera. He's like, I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you, free yourself knowing that people are going to watch every step of your process. And honestly, I've gotten used to it, for one thing, so now I don't really notice it too much. But at first, yeah, I thought about it a lot, and I was like, I don't know, this is scary. I'm like, people are going to see me make mistakes and be unsure or change things and not hold my paintbrush the right way or whatever the heck. So yeah, I get that kind of pressure. For you, though, I would recommend, like, switching it up. Do something outside of your comfort zone. Use a different medium to draw in. Draw with paint or draw with pastels, or sometimes just like switching up your routine can really like throw a monkey wrench in there and kind of re-inspire you, which I think is really great. An exercise we did in school, which is maybe like a little bit weird, but might be interesting for you just to kind of break that pressure. Try to draw with your other hand. See what happens, you know, just, and you won't be so hard on yourself because you're like, well, I don't know how to draw with this hand, but just see what comes out. Or maybe start a drawing with your non-dominant hand and then finish it with your dominant hand. So that might be kind of interesting. So you've got like this really rough kind of just expressive line work, and then you can use your left brain to finish it for you. I bet there's some other ideas out there. I always love, like I said, I got very, worked it into my kind of, my personal style is like the ink blot thing. So I love like creating an ink blot and seeing what I see, what I can see in it and everything. Also, like I was just saying earlier, is do a bunch of drawings and say, no one's going to see these. They're going to go in a box. I'm never going to show them to anyone. And you might surprise yourself what comes out. So yeah, so see if any of those things help. try, another thing that's kind of an interesting brain teaser is get a reference photo, like, you know, of, you know, whatever you want, and then flip it upside down, and then try to draw from it while it's upside down. It's a really great exercise to train your brain to draw what you see instead of what you know, because you're like, oh, I know that this is a head. Well, if it's upside down, all you're doing is interpreting lines and the way things are placed. So that's always kind of a good exercise to sort of break your brain that's always trying to take over and be like, no, I know it like this. So see if that might help you as well. Next question comes from Catherine Calvert. I'm struggling with finding my own personal style. I get inspired by so many different mediums and artists, so my artwork is inconsistent. I get bored easily and I want to try new things. Any advice for finding my individual voice without getting bored? Oh, Catherine, the age-old question, the number one question, possibly my most frequently asked question. This is just a thing that all of us have to go through. It's difficult, and you know what? Style is important, but I also want to, like, you know, push the idea that, like, it's okay to do things that are not in your specific style either. I think that a lot of artists actually trap themselves sometimes. I don't personally feel that way, because I do feel like I'm kind of coming into a style that I enjoy and I'm very comfortable with, and I want to do more of, but I do understand that feeling of like, okay, I see somebody over here doing this and I want to do something very similar to that, and then I see an artist over here and I want to do that. So it's kind of like this style ADD, right? So, I mean, without going too into depth about this, because I have so many times, and I have an entire unit on this in my online class. So I'd love to have you in there and kind of like take you through some of my more specific curriculum on the subject. But honestly, I just encourage you to experiment and just keep trying. Anything that sounds good, try it. I mean, you're in that great place right now where you have not pigeonholed yourself yet, which is kind of a good place to be in. Sometimes an artist may get really popular doing something and then they go, oh, I never really wanted to do just this, and then they get caught in a trap of having to constantly do the same thing, otherwise their followers are going to be disappointed. So I honestly believe in a happy medium, and I've kind of made it my motto that if I want to do something slightly different, I'm going to do it. And I know that I have followers out there that I may have lost since they liked what my style used to be, or they liked my very early paintings and they don't really like my newer paintings. I get that, and that's just a fact of life. But I will find new followers that prefer my newer style, hopefully. So, you know, I have to kind of adapt. My fan base may adapt, and so may yours. There's some artists that have more than one portfolio, and that's totally fine. There's people that do dark, you know, sexual graphic art in their free time, and they do children's books professionally. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. That's okay. So just keep that in mind, that you don't have to get so specific that you're like set in stone forever. That's not necessary. Many artists, famous artists, like, you know, Picasso or whatever, had periods, as you say. Like this period he was doing more cubist stuff, and then some of his early works were actually more realistic. So that's acceptable to adapt and change your style as you go. If you're feeling really overwhelmed, there's, you know, a few exercises that you can do. I taught an entire lesson on Lifebook about style self-discovery and emulating artists that you admire and seeing what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And I am going to offer that video to you guys in the future. I have to wait 1 year after. I have to wait until the end of 2017, and then I can share that with you guys, because that might be kind of a good tool and lesson for you guys to explore your style more in depth. But again, right now, ease off the pressure a little bit and try different styles. You'll start to, I mean, and the number one advice is, and this is where, you know, most artists I've seen give this advice, this is something that does evolve naturally. You know, it's kind of like, trying to tell a kid, well, I want to know what type of adult I'm going to be. Well, you have no idea until you actually get there and you go through life experiences. You try things, you fail at things, you find things that you like, and you fully realize your own individuality and a personality as an adult. So it's a very, very similar thing. And you're going to go through some trial and error. And remember too, I mean, I go through this a lot is, you know, when I'm looking at other artists on Instagram, I'm like, oh crap, I love that artist so much, but I'm never going to be that artist, and I shouldn't want to be. I shouldn't try to copy somebody who's already doing it successfully. I might take some little elements that I see them do and go, oh, how can I kind of add this to my toolkit? But don't get too hung up on being just like somebody either, because that's very dangerous. And then you're never going to be satisfied because it's never going to look as good as theirs. And it shouldn't, because copying someone is never the way to go. And that person probably put in a lot of time, effort, and hours to develop a style that was unique to them. So remember that that person probably put in that hard work that you also need to put in. So think about that. So now I'm going to experiment with creating some transparency in the fairy wings here. And I'm going to be using matte medium, and I'm going to be using a pre-mixed turquoise color that I have on my palette over here. And I'm hoping this is going to work and I can do a thin glaze, so still some of this glow will be showing through. I originally was just going to kind of do flat colors in here, but I realized since I did this nice gradient, I'm going to want a little bit of that to show through. So hopefully this is going to work out, because it's a little bit tricky to get this right. So I'm going to my palette over here, okay, and I'm going to take some of my matte medium, like so, put that on my palette. And then I'm going to take my local color, which is this turquoise, which is going to be this entire area here that is on top of the light. I'm going to mix that. And I'm going to just tap a little bit of the matte medium in there, just a little bit at a time. I don't want to get too thin too fast. Right now I probably have about 50-50, 50 paint and 50 matte medium. Mix that up. Okay. And then I'm going to see how that works. So for example, this is kind of a good way to see how transparent it got. So a little squiggly line. Take my paint. Okay, that's pretty nice. So you can still see the squiggly line through there, but it's got a nice amount of color and it's not too thin. Just for good measure, I'm going to put just a hair bit more, and I'm going to do the tiniest bit of water, a little tiny bit. Okay, we're ready to roll. Takes a little bit of concentration. This is where business gets serious on the paint along here. Scrape some of that off. Do one more test. Okay, that's nice. I don't have as much brush strokiness in it, which is what I'm after. So the tricky part with this is when you thin the paint with a matte medium or something, sometimes it tends to get a bit streaky. So make sure you blend it together really well before you start putting it on, and try to act a little bit quickly, just because matte medium tends to dry real quick like. Okay, so I'm going to attempt to do this while answering a question. Okay, Tigress Love. Is it weird to get compliments from strangers? I feel awkward getting compliments from people I know, so I can't even imagine what it's like to be complimented by people who live in my computer/phone. Love your work, and your hair color is amazing. Oh, well, thank you. Oh, wait, I got a compliment from a stranger. Yeah, it's definitely weird at first. Honestly, online is like you know, most people get kind of used to that. But in person is like the weirdest for me. Like, especially when someone like really, truly, like genuinely loves it. I mean, it's a great feeling, but it's also like weird in a way. So I was at, Wonderground last week, and I met several people. They're just such lovely people, and they walk up to my work and they go, "This is so beautiful. I love it so much." And I'm just like, ah, like it's weird for me. It's so flattering, but at the same time, I totally get what you mean. Where it's like, it's kind of shocking to have someone have that kind of reaction to something you've made, and it's humbling and strange at the same time. And yeah, it took a little bit of getting used to for me, honestly, because I'm such a harsh self-critic. For one thing, wow, that's super pretty. I love that. Look at me complimenting myself. Okay, you guys should all practice at least one compliment to yourself a day. It's good for you. But yeah, I had always been very hard on myself, so I'm always that person that like has a tendency to like deflect a compliment. Like if someone's like, "I love that sweater," I'd be like, "Oh, it has a hole in it. I got it like out of a trash can." And like I just always, they're like, "What?" So I've always been kind of that person that if somebody says something nice to me, I try to like explain it away. But now in my wise old age, I'm getting a little bit better at, just accepting it and being like, "Thank you. That really means a lot to me." Always practice humility. I think it's always, hopefully you mean it. Honestly, I always do. I'm very, very humbled by, anyone having something nice to say to me. And maybe that comes from, going through a lot of awkward years of my life where I didn't have much confidence. I didn't really know how I fit into the world. I was very skinny. I got teased for it. I was one of a very few even mixed race people or any race other than white at the town I grew up in and schools. So I always felt a little bit odd. Kids would, pick on me. They'd say my name was weird. So now, like, when people, like, honestly compliment me, it's a new experience for me. And I'm like, hey, I've earned it. I've gone through awkward times and worked hard, and I think I deserve it. So pat yourself on the back a little bit and just, tell that person thank you and you appreciate their support. That's always like a good way to go, I think. Yeah, so this actually this glaze is working like pretty well, actually. I'm quite liking the effect. So the other thing I'm going to say about doing this is be careful not to, oh, I just literally did it. I don't know if you can see that, but don't over touch this too much. Don't touch too much because the glaze is very thin and you can lift up, you can pull it back up. I'm going to leave that alone. It's actually especially okay because these are wings, so they have, some bits are a little bit lighter than others. But it's best to do one thin pass and then let that dry. And then if you want to do another pass at it, you can. Because unlike when you're doing a solid color where you can like work back into it and blend, it doesn't work quite like that. So if you're doing soft glazes, glaze them in quick and then leave them alone. So we're going to do that over here. And I'm going to be a better example of my own advice. Gonna paint this in quickly. That's the quickie tricky of the day. Ooh, that's so pretty though. I love that. I just taught myself something new today. It really gives a beautiful transparency to these wings. And I'm getting a nice glow back there from the light. That's nice. And then I can kind of blend these seams a little bit because the butterfly wings actually have some kind of seams in them, so it's okay if I have a little bit of that left. That's really pretty. I love that color too. Let's keep it going. Okay, I'm gonna quickly finish this. Actually, that goes all the way up to here. Let's see. Okay. And in this case, it's okay if I go a little bit over the edge because I'm going to paint in the darker transparencies up top. So I'm just going to kind of blend that over. I'm getting my Bob Ross voice coming out. Let's make some happy little butterfly wings. There we go. Isn't that pretty? Love it. Oh my god, have you guys seen the new Funko collectibles of Bob Ross? I want one. I want them all so bad. They have like several different ones. He has like a little pet animal that comes with him, and he has like different paintings. Oh my god, they're so cute. I want all of them. Next time you see me, they're gonna all be lined up on the shelf. Sorry, Garrison Grunt, you're gonna have to move over for my Bob Ross Funkos that I'm gonna get. Okay. Thanks for bearing with me there. I just wanted to concentrate a little bit. Ah, that's very nice, isn't it? It's very nice indeed. Okay. So, I'm going to probably do something similar down here in the sleeves. And the reason these sleeves got like this actually was a total accident. Was kind of exciting as I was in Photoshop. I was trying some different compositions and moving things around and trying to figure out how I was going to work in the wings so that they showed behind the back. And I accidentally like moved the layers around, and I ended up with the wings in front of her like this. And I was like, oh my god, it looks like a really gorgeous sleeve. And I was like, that is really cool. So that was totally an accident. I didn't really mean to do that initially, but I was like, oh, that's cool that the wings actually continue and actually look like part of her costume, part of her dress. I was also kind of loosely inspired by the film Ever After. Did you guys ever see that? I loved that when I was a little youngling, and I love that reveal scene where Drew Barrymore gets to the ball, and she like comes up the stairs, and she's got these incredible like transparent glittery wings and this like off the shoulder gown, and it's all like very blue and silver, and I was like, oh, I really love that. And she's I think she actually kind of has a similar hairstyle as this too, so that was actually another reference inspiration that came to mind. But yeah, so that dress kind of slightly inspired this as well. So before I go in and do a similar thing down here, I want to paint in the rest of her arms so that my transparency will actually go in on top of her flesh tone. So let's do that now while we move on to the next question. Okay, next I have a question from Kimmy J408. Hi Kimmy, I love your paintings. Thank you, my dear. Whenever I feel unmotivated to do art, I just go watch your videos like a million times and it gets me motivated. Oh, thank you so much. That means a lot to me. Have you ever had people in your life that would discourage you from doing art? And what artists are your biggest inspirations as of right now? Love you, and you're one of my biggest inspirations as an artist. I'm in college studying my art degree. Oh, good for you. I hope some of today's advice may help you as well. Thank you. That's a huge honor. Your words mean a lot to me, honestly. Yeah, so have you ever had people in your life discourage you from doing art? Kind of, sort of. I never really had, like, my parents were very supportive, so I was very lucky in that regard, and they always were supportive of me doing it professionally. I certainly had people say, even since being a professional, how do you possibly make a living doing that? Or like, you do that as a living? Oh, yeah, right. Or must be nice, or that must be fun, in a very condescending way. I get that a lot. But I'm just like, screw you. I don't care. I do my thing, and that's fine. I actually, I don't know. I don't think this person would ever find out, but I met a group of artists once, and I think it was at a con, and my husband, or boyfriend at the time, he is a professional concept artist and does incredible work. And he was up for an award at Spectrum Fantastic Art Live. So I was there, and I was with a group, and so, you know, he was with professionals, and they know who he is, and, you know, everything. And this girl who was an artist, I didn't know who she was, and she's like, oh, well, what do you do, you know, because obviously your husband's amazing. And I was like, oh, well, I'm an artist, and blah, blah, blah. I said what I do, and she's like, you're an artist too. you're an artist too. And I was like, bitch, okay. I mean, like, clearly she judged me. Like, everyone thinks they're an artist nowadays. And it was like, she judged me based on nothing. She didn't even know. And I mean, I sometimes find those type of events kind of awkward because, yeah, I mean, maybe it sounds like frivolous what I do, but I can assure you I put a lot of hard work in, and I work many more hours than my husband works sometimes. He's doing freelance right now, so he's working along with me. But yeah, so I don't know. People sometimes pass judgment, but I try not to let it get to me because honestly, I'm laughing all the way to Disneyland every year doing Disney paintings and selling my artwork at Wonderground Gallery. So I'm like, yeah, whatever. I'm doing just fine, thanks. Okay, sorry, not to get like a big head about it, but you got to kind of talk yourself up when people try to talk you down, right? Who's some of your biggest inspirations as of right now? Oh gosh, I change all the time. I have some amazing ones I found on Instagram lately that I hadn't even heard of. I've followed her for a few years now. Kelsey Beckett is an artist that I've kind of come across lately, and I'm like, oh, I love you. I just want to steal your talent and be you. Really, really love her style of painting. I think her and I actually, super humbly speaking, have a little bit of a similar aesthetic in that she loves to blend graphics with more rendered. I mean, she's a better painter than me, okay? But I hadn't seen her work as I was developing my style, and I more recently found out, I'm like, damn, she does what I want to do, but better than me. But yeah, I'm really inspired by that because I think we both kind of have similar inspirations, maybe. I mean, I don't know, but I found that kind of interesting. Yeah, anyways, I'll have to come up with a few more for you. I'm gonna put some right here because I'm gonna look them up and show you these artists that I am following on Instagram right now. Right? Amazing. Beautiful. Okay, so go find them. Okay, Penny Bleh is back. Hello, Miss Penny Bleh. I hope you're feeling less bleh and maybe a little bit better than bleh today. How do you price your paintings when first starting out? Now, that's a really great question. Now, obviously, art is kind of subjective, and definitely there's a lot of factors that determine what to charge. And basically, when you're first starting out, you kind of got to go with an amount that you can get away with. Obviously, if you're like, this painting is $10,000 and no one knows who you are, you're probably not going to sell it. Like, sorry about it. But what I highly recommend doing when you're first starting out is to kind of keep a little time card and see how much time that you spend on your paintings. And then there's a couple of ways that you can do that, but depending on, start small. Like, what's the minimum wage in your area? And times that by how many hours went into your painting. And make sure that you also calculate, drawing, sketching, research even, if you want to calculate that. Although, I mean, a lot of artists don't really get to even charge for that portion. But just to give you a rough idea of what your time is worth. And that will give you a good jumping off point. And it kind of depends how quick you are and how slow you are. And you might be pretty slow at first, so that's okay. And then I would also do some market research and see how much artists of your caliber, of your experience, are charging for theirs. You're also going to have to take into account how much following you have. So that really depends. I definitely was selling my first few paintings. Okay, so I mean, if inflation aside, but my first few paintings in 2008 and 2009, I did a little series of small paintings. I had some little like 6x6 paintings, and I sold those for about $100 each. And I definitely spent probably a day on them, so that's like not too terrible. But if that kind of gives you an idea. Some of my I did some large ambitious paintings, as some of you guys know, when I got my first show in 2009. And those took me a pretty long time to sell because I did spend a lot of hours, and I think at the time I was only maybe asking, they were definitely asking under 1,000, maybe like 500 to 800 for really big paintings. So it's okay. Sometimes you gotta wait to find a buyer, but just do some research for yourself and start with those tips that I had and kind of see where you're falling into that category. I mean, honestly, us artists don't do this for the money. A lot of times we have to take less than minimum wage for what we do, because sometimes I have setbacks. Sometimes I have to start over and I'm like, I'm not even making a minimum wage on how many hours I put into this. But do keep reproduction in mind. So I do make a lot of my money back through prints and things like that. So that definitely counts as well. So you don't have to have a perfect, you know, payment for your time on the painting if you think you're going to have some prints that are going to sell as well. So keep that in mind. Hopefully that gives you a jumping off point. I think I went a little bit rambly on that one. But kind of look at other people's stores on like Etsy and stuff. Like, just see other artists that are kind of similar to you or have been around about the same amount of time, or artists have similar fan bases on Instagram and Facebook and stuff, and then compare to that and kind of just go from there. Okay, I only have a couple questions left, so hopefully I can get everybody in today. That would be amazing, so I'm going to try to answer a little bit faster. Next question is from Annie Fishstar. You're so positive. I love your videos. They are my artist block frustration remover. Oh, thank you very much. Thanks for that. My question, which one of your paintings would you love to remake, and what would you change? Oh, I've actually been thinking quite a bit about this one. That's a great question. Because I have some that I would like to revisit. Probably the one that jumps to mind offhand is my 3 Fates. I did those a long time ago. They were very, very small paintings, so I couldn't really get like too much detail into them. And I love the subject matter, and actually those have been very successful mini prints, even though like how small and like kind of simplistic they are and really not up to the caliber that I paint now. So I would like to revisit that. I think I would do them all in one piece instead of separate paintings, because I think that could be kind of cool to have like the trio in one painting. So that's the one I would really like to do. I might do a different color palette, probably completely sort of reinvent the theme, but I still would want to use like the symbolism of like the scissors, the life strand, maybe kind of like tying them together. Like, that'd be really cool. So I'm gonna put that one on the to-do list. If you guys want that, I'll put it like maybe on a poll on my Patreon too, if that's a painting that they would like to see me do. I let my Patreon patrons vote on subjects, painting subjects. So if you would like to get in on that, all you have to do is pledge $1 a month to get involved with my patron-only polls. So that is a very good reason to get involved. And this piece was voted on by my Patreon patrons. So you have them to thank for me doing a Fairy Queen piece, because I put it up as a vote, and this is the one that they wanted to see next. So here she is. Okay, I think I have like 1 or 2 questions. This was all my Instagram questions. I have a couple questions from, I think I have 1 from Twitter and like a couple from Facebook, and then we are ready and done. Okay, let's see. Okay, so I have 2 questions from Twitter, and here they are. The first one is from Irina Ramillo. Hello, Irina. So nice to chat with you here on the Paint Along today. If you could paint an album cover for any band or musician, who would it be? Oh man, oh gosh, that's a hard one. Well, it would be pretty cool to do like any album art. I would love the opportunity to do that. I kind of have, actually. I had someone, a band actually asked to use my image for, speaking of the 3 Fates, because it was actually this right here. So that was kind of cool. My number 1, some of you guys know this, my odd favorite band ever is Primus, and so I would have to say I'd be totally stoked to do an album cover for them, even though my style doesn't necessarily fit with their branding necessarily, but I would still totally be stoked about that. Probably Lady Gaga would be pretty darn cool to do a Lady Gaga cover. I don't think she's ever done anything that's really art, though. It's usually like, I guess, her on there, but that would be super cool. So I guess I would have to start with those. Okay, my next question comes from Ashanti Bell. If you were to create a Bay character for your favorite video game, what would they be like? What would be their backstory? Okay, so like I'm still like kind of confused about this whole Bay thing. So that's like a love interest, right? I feel like really old and stupid. Like I need to look it up. If you were to create a Bay character, so I'm gonna say if you were to create a love interest for your favorite video game, because like a lot of my favorite video games have love interests in them, and that's part of why it's my favorite. Like Mass Effect, obviously. So I don't really know. That one's kind of, that's a hard question. I guess, I mean, like, let's say if I was gonna do one for, Kirby Superstar or something, because I was a huge Kirby player. Kirby doesn't really have a Bay. He could really use a Bay. So he's a cream puff. So that might be funny if I designed, like, another pastry, like maybe she's a little cinnamon roll, or she has a little cinnamon roll on her head, or something like that. So maybe I would design, you know, like Mrs. Pac-Man. Maybe I would go that direction. I don't know. I'm sorry. That's a totally lame answer. I gotta come up with something better than that. Okay, finally, I've got a couple of questions here on my Facebook fan page, which sadly has dwindled to like no one ever seeing my posts on there, but that's okay. I appreciate you guys that are still on here. Oh, wow. Okay, it actually looks like we got quite a few questions on here, more than I thought. So let's I will try to knock these out quickly so everybody gets their question answered on the paint along today. Okay, Nicoletta B, or Nicoletta Blue K. Have you seen the trailer for Loving Vincent? Yeah, I've seen the trailer, but I haven't seen the movie. It's a movie about Vincent van Gogh, but it's all fully oil painted. I know, I heard of that. So it's not out yet, I guess you said. I would love to see that. I have seen the trailer. I saw some like behind the scenes clips of them making that, and I was like, that is so crazy. It is such an ambitious undertaking. They literally have like, I think, I'm not sure how many artists, maybe hundreds, a lot of artists, and they're actually doing each still of the movie, so it's like animated like old school style, but they're oil paintings. It's absolutely insane. So everything kind of like moves, like the brush strokes and stuff. It's awesome. So thanks Nicoletta for bringing that up. Hopefully we'll check that out when it comes out. Jennifer T, has anyone ever taken something from your work that you would have never imagined could be assumed? Has what others got from your work ever angered or offended you? Has anyone ever taken something from your work that you would have never imagined? Like react. Okay, I'm trying to get my head around the question. So like, someone had a reaction that you were surprised by? Yeah. Not really, never angered, maybe slightly offended though. One time I had, I've been offended before. Sometimes, I know people don't mean anything by it, but sometimes they open their mouths without much thought of what's coming out. I once was I had my paintings on display at a studio gallery that I was working in, and I had my Kamiko piece, my red geisha, and that was up on the wall. And this guy comes up to me, and he was like, he's like, it's a great painting. He's like, but I just don't understand the third arm. And I was like, what? And he's like, I don't understand the third arm. Like, can you explain to me, like, the meaning behind it? And I was like, and then I got like he was very adamant, very, very adamant. And I was like, I don't know what you mean. She has two arms. And he's like, you don't see the third arm? Like, how can you not see it? And he was like trying to talk me into it. And I was like, sir, I appreciate your introspective, but I have no idea what you're talking about. And then he apparently thought that the sleeve was an arm, or I don't know what. Anyway, it was very weird, and it went on for way too long, and I was like, this is just getting awkward, and what drugs are you on? So that one was a little bit strange. I also had a lady once who, like, I still kind of feel bad about it, because I definitely took it the wrong way, and I think she, like, knew she offended me. But I was at a show once, and she held up one of my prints, and she's like, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm like, oh, thank you. And she's like, my 7-year-old did a painting that looks exactly like this. Exactly like this. And I was like, okay, And then she like wouldn't drop it. Like she kept going on. She's like, I just can't believe how similar it looks to my 7-year-old's work. She's like, my 7-year-old does work just like this. It's just crazy. Like she's amazing. And I'm like, okay, it's like you're saying that to a professional artist and saying your child does art exactly like and just as good as you. So like under my breath, I was kind of like, okay, well, good thing I went to art school, or good thing I wasted so much money on art school or something. I kind of like said it under my breath, and it's not typically my style to like be rude. And she's like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, I was like, it's fine. It's just, it was a bad day. It was one of my early shows and it was raining and I hadn't sold anything. And it was just like, lady, like what? I mean, I just didn't really understand her train of thought, because it got to the point where she would not like let it go. And I'm like, okay, like you're now saying my work is very childlike. And so, yeah, I don't know. Anyways, I'm sure she didn't mean it. I was in not that great of a mood and it kind of just put me over. So yeah, so people have, I mean, but don't worry about what you say to me. Mostly I can take it, and I'm very appreciative of feedback. Okay, Jamie B, what are some ways to expand your brand or market your art? What is the most challenging things about an art career? I've already answered that before, so I'm probably going to send you to another video. I have answered that like exactly before, and I talked about that a bit on this paint along already about, you know, getting your art out there and stuff. Karen F, what is your next hair color going to be? Hopefully it's going to stay like this for a while, so we're going to see how long I can maintain this. It definitely, as much as I enjoy it, it's very high maintenance. I've noticed it's almost time to like do my roots already. I've got like super dark roots. And also it loves to like change colors on me. Like at first I was like, oh, it's really great, like pale, like silvery white. And then it like turned kind of brassy yellow, and it's like, you got to retone and use the purple shampoo and everything. But yeah, I really like it right now. It's fun. So I don't know, eventually when I'm kind of like ready to move on, I'll probably just dye it a bunch of crazy colors. I'd like to do like a mint aqua for a while. That might be fun, but I don't want to kill my blonde that I've worked so hard to get right now. Okay, Jude B, do you find working on canvas more difficult with it being more toothy? Does painting on smooth boards help with blending? That's a good question. I haven't really talked about that before. But I would not say that it's more difficult. It's just a different style of applying paint, if you will. Since canvas has tooth on it, when you drag your brush on it, the paint goes on in a different way. And canvas is really great, especially if you want to build up some texture. It's not as slippery. Sometimes the boards that I work on can be a little bit frustrating because they're so slick. So I usually like to, like in this case, when I do like a spray painted background layer, I like it because it gives it just a little bit of tooth, but I can still build paint smoothly on top of it. So that's kind of like my favorite way to work right now. Because some of these pre-gessoed ones are like paint will not even stick to it. So sometimes I even have to like spray it down with some fixative or something just to give it a little bit of texture, because a lot of people find that frustrating. Like, I can't even get my paint to stick on this darn thing. So yeah, but if you really don't want a lot of texture and brush strokes, I definitely recommend going the route that I go. The main reason though that, because I don't really mind texture. Sometimes I like to get even some thicker paint and have some textural areas. But the main reason why I switched over to using these smooth gesso board is because I like to incorporate a little bit of drawing. Sometimes I like to use some graphite and do some outlining and things like that. And that's just doesn't work on canvas really. You got to do it with paint, because pencils, not only could you stab right through your canvas on accident if you're not careful, but there's obviously the texture on there is not going to give you smooth line work. So that's why I like this, or, you know, wood or something. Alyssa KC, what piece of yours are you currently most proud of? I think I'm really proud of my Barbie pieces. Those were quite, and after like all the kind of the trauma I went through to get them so perfect, and then they got damaged when they got shipped, and then I fixed them, and then I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy my little children are okay. So those right now, and they look so fabulous in their hot pink frames at Gallery 1988. There's one back there, so you can see. And they're still available. So there's really kind of like my personal, like, some of my favorites right now. So please contact Gallery 1988 if you'd like to give one of these a home. I also still have gorgeous limited edition prints of them available exclusively through the gallery, so you can find them there too. I love my Disney pieces. My Disney pieces are some of my proudest, just for several reasons. Is because of getting to do something so iconic, and also I spend a lot of time trying to get those really, really perfect because, you know, obviously when you're working with a brand like that, you want to have the highest quality of work that you can. So I am very proud of those, even though they were kind of a painful struggle sometimes. Okay, my last question of the day goes to April N. Thank you so much, April. You have the last question of the day here on the Paint Along. Have you ever used the golden rule in your art? Oh, yeah. Of course. I actually teach that in my class. Not as much the golden ratio as the rule of thirds, because most of my pieces are not really that kind of composition. It usually works a little bit better if it's there's certain types of work. I mean, it works in anything, but without getting too technical, most of the time I find the rule of thirds applies better to the dimensions of the paintings that I do. When something is super centered like this, it doesn't follow the rule of thirds necessarily, but I do have a lot of pieces where I always take them into account. And if you guys don't know what the rule of thirds is, then take my class. I will teach you all about how that works. But basically, it's a gridding system that helps you determine where a strong focal point will be, and a pleasing focal point. So, for example, okay, this might be too big for you guys to even see. But my piece, Lady Amalthea, this one does follow the rule of thirds. And I meant it that way when I designed it. So if you laid a thirds grid over this, you would see that her eye actually falls right on the intersection of the grid. And so that makes it a focal point because it's just a mathematical calculation of how the eye focuses and sees your most important area. So anyways, I mean, I have a much deeper explanation of that, but yes, I do use it, and I use it often, and I use all other classical foundation, composition, and design techniques because I think they work for the most part. I also use hidden shape language and things like that, which I also discuss in my class, so find me there. Okay, guys, well, that is it for me on this episode. My mouth is tired from talking, but I'm so happy that I was actually able to answer everyone's questions. I think even if this paint along ended up being 2 parts, which it probably did because I think I have a lot of footage. But anyway, hopefully this will but hopefully this will keep you entertained for a little while I make another paint along, because I know I've been gone for a while, so I'm giving you guys a double dose. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you had fun. I will be back with another paint along very soon. Please post your questions below with hashtag AskLJ, and I will do my best to answer them on a future episode. If you guys are going to be in the Anaheim area near the end of the month, September 23rd and 24th, I will be back there again, signing my artwork and meeting and greeting you guys on Saturday and Sunday from 2 to 5. If you can't make it to meet me, you can also stop by the shop and pick up some of my prints in person and see my whole collection and do a little shopping. Okay, well, I guess that's it for me on this episode, and see you guys next time. Bye! Keep creating!